Okay, my loves. I know there are a lot of you that are out there that are really wondering, how do I even set boundaries anymore? Maybe you didn't grow up with great boundaries. Maybe boundaries weren't really modeled well for you, or maybe you were told that you cannot have boundaries. Maybe you're tired of being gaslighted in your relationships, and you're tired of feeling crazy all the time and guilty for trying to make a difference in your life. If this is you, then I want you to come schedule a call with me. Let's chat about the Unashamed Image Program. The Unashamed Image Program is geared towards you specifically. I am going to be helping you in our next upcoming session of the Unashamed Image. I am personally going to train you how to not feel crazy when someone is gaslighting you, how to be able to stand your ground, to keep your boundaries intact, and to also see through the bull crap. I am also going to be teaching you how to set really confident boundaries that you can really rely on. And I'm going to help you communicate them in a way that really makes sense. Basically, I'm going to help you live a life free of shame and on your terms. If you are ready and you are done feeling all the shame and guilt for trying to set boundaries, if you are not willing to live another moment the way you are right now and in somebody else's shadow, then this is the time to schedule that call with me. It's completely free, no pressure, just love, just support. Go to www.erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. Scroll down the page to where it says, Let's Chat About Working Together. Click on that button and it'll take you to my booking page. If you're ready to live the unashamed life, schedule that call. Let's get you in the Unashamed Image Program, my loves. From my heart to your heart. Bye. Welcome to the other side of the struggle. This is a podcast where we talk about trauma, how to heal it, and then how to take it and use it to unlock your mission and your potential, and to use it to live your very best dream life. When you're dealing with betrayal trauma, it can be hard to know how to heal it, how to stop the pain, and to know what your next steps are to take in your own life. And these are the questions that we try to answer here. Trauma has the ability to rob us of our joy and identity, which is why it's so miserable to experience. But with the right tools and with the right mindset, we can totally reclaim that joy and even use this trauma to strengthen ourselves, so that way trauma does not knock us off of our joy again. Living your dream life should be a non-negotiable, but trauma tends to try to negotiate that with you. And even though trauma is not something that we will completely ever be free of in our life, the pain is negotiable. This is why I created Erin Anderson Betrayal Trauma Coaching and this podcast, is because I want my listeners, I want my clients to live, truly live free from the prison that trauma can put you in. I want you to live on the other side of the struggle. Trauma can be a beast. It has the potential to get you to believe things about yourself that just aren't true. Things like, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not beautiful, and the list goes on. And each one of those beliefs cause a crack in our hearts. And I get it.
going through my own betrayal trauma, these were a lot of the things that I used to think, plus many others. So, when I had the meditation to see each one of those cracks as a way of healing, and not just of healing a flesh and blood heart, but the ability to heal a flesh and blood heart to gold, was transformational. And now I want to give you that exact same transformation for free. Pick up my Heart of Gold meditation. It is absolutely free, and I want to see it give you the exact same transformation that it did me. So check out the description below. Pick up the Heart of Gold meditation. The link is right there in the description. And while you're at it, don't forget to click on the Calendly link above to make sure that you schedule some one-on-one time with me to help you personally get through your betrayal trauma. All right, with that, let's listen to this week's episode. Hey, my loves. I am so excited to be back with you again this week. And especially in the month of November, it is just a great month to be talking about gratitude and miracles. And I kind of just wanted this to be the theme for this month because these are two of the major things that I talk about when it comes to healing from trauma, especially betrayal trauma. I mean, I look back at where I was 10 years ago and to where I am now. And I remember 10 years ago thinking like it would take a miracle to get here. And to be honest, I was right. It did take a miracle, and it is a miracle that I am where I'm at. And I feel so free from the betrayals and the traumas from before that now, if somebody has a struggle in my family and they come and tell me that would have normally sent me spiraling into trauma mode, now I get to just naturally show up differently. Now it's more like, oh, okay, do you want to talk about that? And I don't get emotionally involved for myself. I can empathize, I can meet that person where they're at emotionally for them, but it never stills my joy anymore. And that in and of itself is a miracle, and one that I am so grateful for. And I know that a lot of my listeners are probably in the boat I was in 10 years ago, feeling like to get to the point of complete peace, confidence, never letting their joy waver again because of the decisions of another person, that feels a bit out of reach and like it would take an absolute miracle to get there. So, I want to talk today about what a miracle is and how we can start to call a few more of those our direction. I know personally for me, I need miracles daily. And I would even say that just the simple fact that I can still feel calm and collected when things aren't going my way or the thing are going the direction that I would like them to. I think it's a really big deal. because I don't want to constantly feel anxious or depressed or angry. That's just an exhausting place to live from. And I'm not saying that I don't have moments that are intense anymore, or that I get a little bit anxious or even sometimes depressed a bit, but it doesn't last. And that's the point. My joy always, always comes back. And I think it's because, looking back at the trauma, I think it was kind of a miracle in and of itself that I even experienced what I did, because the things I learned from it are so valuable. So valuable. And those things that I've learned have helped me create miracles over and over and over again with God, and has deepened my relationship with Him. And, I've said this before, that if I hadn't had to have gone through what I did, I don't know that I would have had the need to rely on God the way I did, and to gain a relationship with Him like I did. It's truly, it was a rough journey, but the gratitude I feel now going through what I did, and honestly being able to say I don't think I would have changed a thing, I think is kind of a miracle too. So, what is a miracle? The definition, and we're talking, Webster's dictionary definition here of a miracle, is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws, and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. So, in other words, it's something that we don't know how to create ourselves. And so normally it's something that we chalk up to God. I think about this poem, and it's a really good explanation for what a miracle is, in my opinion. And it's called Footprints in the Sand. And I'm not going to read it. You guys can go ahead and look that up. But it's basically the story of this man who is walking on the beach alongside the Savior, and it's a representation of his life. And he looks back at all of those footprints and the times that he was struggling the most. That's when he noticed one footprint, or one set of footprints, I should say. And he looks at the Savior and he's like, "Why did you abandon me during those most hard times of my life?" And the Savior's reply was like, "Why do you think I abandoned you? Those were the times I carried you." And I look back at my own life and going through the traumas I did, and I can honestly say that when I was finally ready, to admit that I couldn't do something, that it was not within my bandwidth, it was not within my power to do something like healing immense trauma. And I had been to therapy, guys. I want you to understand that I had done everything my brain could think of to heal from trauma. But the things that I did, and the things that I was doing back then to try to heal, didn't work. And the therapy helped to a degree, but it never truly did the trick. Like it gave me a few tools and stuff, but I still felt like I was stuck in the same position time and time again. And I wanted deep healing. I was so tired of trauma ruling my life and the poor decisions of another to determine whether or not I could be truly happy. And I was craving peace. And I finally got to a point where I just had to be carried. But it was in that carrying time that I learned so much. And one of the things that I truly deeply learned in that time was that he was always there. He was always willing and ready to swoop in and not take over, but like really do some deep, solid teaching with me. The entire time I was going through trauma, he knew that if I would just let him teach me how to heal, that I would gain this miraculous relationship with him. This beautiful, beautiful relationship that I'm so grateful for today, and I lean heavily on now. The reason why I felt such a hard time connecting to him while I was dealing with so much intense trauma was because I was literally focusing so heavily on the trauma. I was giving all my time, my talents, my energy, my thoughts, you name it. I was throwing it all at this problem because I felt like that was the only thing I could do. But the thing that actually did the changing was when I decided to take Christ up on his word when he said, "My burden is light." I decided to do the one thing that I hadn't done, the only one thing I hadn't tried, and that was to put this trauma down and to pick up Christ's burden instead. Which meant that I would pray more, I would journal more, I would study my scriptures more. And you guys have heard me say that, people ask all the time, like, what book do I recommend when it comes to healing from trauma? And I always say the scriptures. There's so many passages in the scriptures that talk about healing from intense trauma, and so many stories of people who had to heal. And I got my information from there, and the Spirit speaking to me and helping me see things in a different light than what I was seeing them. And those thoughts and perceptions were the very things that were keeping me in the trauma. And I know, like, it can be so scary to think about, just giving your husband back his phone and not putting passwords on his phone. Like family computers and stuff like that, I still have passwords on them because I feel like for family things, it's really important for safety, But for my husband's phone, the rule is the kids don't get on it. I don't want the kids on it if you're going to use it for inappropriate things. But I'm not going to try to control it. It's not mine. It's not my cross to bear. And while I was going through the trauma, I was literally taking the cross of my husband and his addiction, the cross of my mom, the cross of my neighbor, all of these people that were causing a lot of trauma for me, all these relationships that were very much centered and planted in relationship trauma. I was carrying it all because I felt like I had to. And if I put that down, well, it was almost like the cross that I perceived I would have to carry from that decision would be heavier than the one I was already carrying. But it was the one thing I hadn't actually done yet. And so I decided to try it. And that one decision to drop everyone else's crosses and let them carry their own burden for a bit. Well, I unburdened myself, took upon me the burden of Christ, and He took my burden. Oh my gosh, you guys. Isn't it wonderful that we have a Savior and that He knows His role so perfectly? Because when we are struggling, if we just breathe and decide to search for truth, pray, and ask for Him to come in and do the heavy lifting, He does it. What is a miracle?
So how do you feel about boundaries? It's a legitimate question. A lot of people come to me really struggling with this concept. They often feel guilty for setting boundaries, or they're not sure about even what a boundary is. They've heard the term, set the boundary, things like that, but that's really confusing for them because it's not something that's well taught in our society nowadays, right? They know that boundaries are really important to having healthy, constructive, supportive, and wonderful relationships, but why? And oftentimes they also know that they feel like their boundaries are being violated, but they can't quite pinpoint what the boundary is that's being violated. That's why I've created the Clarifying and Creating Your Boundaries free PDF. You can find out what your boundaries are, how to tune in to what the boundary needs to be, and how to effectively create and communicate your boundary so that way you stay in this place that respects you, respects the other person, but also gives you the confidence in your boundaries so that way you stop being gaslighted, disrespected, and unseen. Having your boundaries really clear gives you a voice and also helps the other person stay in accountability with themselves. So that's not a role that you have to take on anymore. So if you are ready to really have clear boundaries, to really understand what your role is in the boundary, and to give yourself some safety and some protection against people that might try to gaslight you or are just being disrespectful, go grab my Creating and Clarifying Your Boundary PDF at erinandersonthetraumacoach.com. And while you're there, let's schedule a call with me. Come have a chat with me so that way I can really, really help you master this particular skill, creating boundaries, clarifying the boundary, communicating that boundary, And so that way I can also help you have relationships that show up to support you, cherish you, and love you.
The truest miracle I think I've ever experienced in my life is gaining such a relationship with my Savior. The trial gave me that ability to do it. And like Kelly so wisely pointed out last week, I mean, I don't want you, my listener, thinking that trials are the only catalyst that will get you into deep healing. Healing from trauma can totally be playful, and it's really interesting now that I look back. One of the ways that the Lord, I don't want to say the word coaxed, I don't feel like that's the right word, but one of the ways that He soothed me into a relationship with Him was to play games. Like I'm talking about board games, card games, chess. God is actually someone who loves to play, and He knows that playing with you will create a deeper relationship with you. And if you've been following me, you know that play is one of my pillars for living an unashamed life. But I look at this play concept and how I would break out a deck of cards. Like I started focusing on this, guys, and it was fabulous. I would break out a deck of cards and I'd be like, okay, God, all right, we're going to play a game. You come down and you play with me, and we're going to talk and we're going to connect, and we're going to have this fabulous conversation over this game. So I would deal out these cards, and God plays poker, guys. Just in case you wanted to know. And we would play card games and we would play board games, and anytime I would say this is a game with God, He won every single time. And I would end up laughing and gaining some serious wisdom. I should mention too that during these card games with God and these board games with God, I always had a journal next to me and a notebook, because I would literally talk out loud to Him about what I was facing and what I was experiencing and what happened neurologically in my brain is, instead of looking at the problem as a burden to solve, it all of a sudden became fun to solve. And I realized that God is a God of fun, that He's a God of play, that He's someone you can connect with on a very deep level and have really meaningful, soul-soothing conversations with. What is a miracle? A miracle is the deep relationship you gain with Him if you choose to. It's not just Him carrying the burden, but it's also the relationship you gain from Him, playing with Him, enjoying life with Him, because when you are in joy, you are actually in a clearer communication. You think about, a telephone conversation, and the line when it's completely clear versus the line when it's just full of static and people are breaking up here and there and you're like, I'm not sure I got the right message. Play is the line clearer. It is the thing that helps you actually hear God clearly because you're meant to have joy. When you are in joy, you do hear the Lord much clearer. But when you're in absolute misery, it's hard. It's a lot harder to hear Him. You know, one of the things I love to ask my clients when they're coming to me and they're talking about their traumas and the betrayals and their anxieties is this one question: what haven't you tried yet? Oftentimes, the answer is lying within that question. The answer to creating our miracle is inside that question. What haven't you tried yet? And sometimes that's hard to think about. Sometimes it's like, I've tried everything I can think of. I've tried everything that I know. But even though I was in that place, I had to admit to myself that the one thing that I hadn't done to heal was the one thing that seemed the most terrifying. It seemed like it was just going to make everything so much worse. But in reality, taking that path and being brave, I found myself down that path. I found God down that path. The trials and the trauma, it didn't define me in that path. It was the very path that caused me to heal. And the neatest thing, taking that path has helped the relationships that were causing a lot of trauma before to actually start showing up in a healing, supportive way. What was happening, and it was, one of the untruths that trauma teaches you is that you're unlovable, or you're worthless, because you're looking at all these people who are supposed to love you and they can't, but it's because of their own trauma. Their trauma is doing the talking, and it's speaking to your trauma, which is triggering more trauma in both you and them. And boy, isn't that a thing that the adversary loves, is because the trauma that you're experiencing is triggering other people's traumas, and their traumas are triggering your traumas. And what a better recipe for a hopeless disaster of a life. Like, it makes you feel like you're in an airplane, the engines are down, it's on fire, you're heading for the mountain, and you're gonna crash and burn. Because I was there. I remember feeling that way. But I came to a realization that idea of me crashing and burning was far more terrifying than me giving my husband back his phone. The point here, my beautiful, beautiful listeners, if you want healing, if you want this miracle, you have to be willing to put something on the sacrifice. For me to create this miracle, I had to actually sacrifice the trauma. this belief that I had to control everything in order to obtain healing. I didn't. I needed to simply just trust that the Lord could teach my husband better than I could, and that my job was to leave my husband, my mom, my neighbor, and whoever else was creating trauma in his hands as the master, knowing that he could reach them, and just let him reach. I needed to be the one to reach up at that point, grab his hand, and do what I needed to do to live a happy, joyful life. And now that I'm healed, now I have a message to share with the world that you can heal too. What is a miracle? You are. And that's why you can call down the miracle of healing to you if you so choose. All right, my loves. So next week, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about how to create miracles using the 5-step thought process, which is huge in creating miracles. How you view your world, how you view the situations around you really are so big in how to change something that is so painful into something that will give you such a lasting joy. All right, my loves. See you next week. Bye. Hey, fabulous listener. I have a question for you. How done with trauma are you? Are you ready to uplevel your life and start creating the dreams that you thought were out of your reach? Are you ready to be free of the choices of other people? Are you ready to start living a life for yourself and creating the dreams that you want? And are you ready to start attracting relationships that show up to support those dreams? Are you also ready to create an amazing and deep love and trust in yourself and your decisions? If this is an absolute yes, then I want to invite you to come and join my 7-day Unashamed Chalk Talk. In this 7-day course, we are going to be going over each one of the 7 pillars for living an unashamed and completely self-trustful life. You will have some very quick, very concise, but powerful assignments to do every day. Plus, you also get access to me live for 7 days. You are going to get to learn how to set the goals that you want to achieve in your life completely unashamed, and also how to figure out what it is that's out of alignment in your life and stopping you from achieving those goals. Then we're going to get into how to get your brain to actually listen to the things that you want and start working on creating them. And also how to give yourself permission to truly love and care for yourself in an amazingly, fabulously fun way. And also how to regain the confidence and love that you deserve to give yourself, despite what anyone else thinks, says, or does about you. Now I can almost hear you say, okay, well that sounds great, but how much does it cost? That is also an exciting part of this. It's only $97. How awesome is that? For only $97, you can start creating the changes you want. There's literally no reason for you to not click on the link in the description below and get started. Come join me today in the Unashamed Chalk Talk, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today and listening in on this podcasting episode. Don't forget to tune in next week. It's gonna